while it was advertised as sapphic, it wasn't as gay as I was hoping for. I was hoping for maximum gayness, and I did not get that, so was slightly disappointed there. Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Hemagen, coming to you live from my sweltering apartment, even though it's November 6th. I'm not sure why it's so hot here in Japan. Today we are going to talk about the books I read in October. I wore a tarot card themed dress to fit the theme. Stats for you here. I read 11 books, 12 if you count my DNF, which we will talk about. 4 of them were physical, 7 of them were audio, and 0 were in ebook format. 4,411 pages. 1 nonfiction, 1 fantasy, maybe 2 contemporaries, and the rest are thrillers. I tried to stay with a spooky theme for Halloween, and I feel like I did pretty well with that. Let's talk about the first book I finished in October, and that is Clockwork Princess, which is the final book in the Infernal Devices series. What can I say about this series that I haven't already said before? I was just enraptured with this series from start to finish. I loved everything about it. I loved the characters. God, I'm getting ahead of myself. If you've never heard of this series, I mean, I'm sure you have, but Cassandra Clare, Shadowhunters, there was a terrible movie made about them, and then a slightly less terrible TV show. I'm not hating on the TV show, it's not that bad. We have Shadowhunters, who are half human, half angel, also known as Nephilim. They protect the mortal world from demons. This series is set in London in the 1800s. It's very steampunky, nice little urban fantasy. We have Tessa Gray, who is the main, she's a female lead. She is American. She comes to London to visit her brother. Pretty much immediately she gets, what's the word I want to use here? She gets sucked into the Downworlder universe and gets tangled up with Shadowhunters and also Downworlders, which are warlocks, vampires, werewolves, fae, and such. And our 2 male leads, Jem Carstairs, who is the love of my life, and Will Herondale. We follow their story. There is a love triangle, yes. I don't want to say anymore. I don't want to say anymore. I just want you to read it. The characters, the setting, the kind of decorum that comes with, you know, how people behaved in the 1800s. Just everything. Just everything, start to finish. I loved this series. It got 5 stars from me. I cannot think of one bad thing to say about it, to be honest with you. James Carstairs is literally my favorite character of all time from any book I've ever read. I love him so much. And yes, we have a love triangle in this book, but I feel like the relationship that impacted me the most was the friendship between Will and Jace. Did I say Jace? Oh my god. Will and Jem. Why did I say Jace? I don't even like Jace. Cassandra Clare has another series called The Mortal Instruments, which there's a movie based on it. It's a lot more well known. And I did kind of DNF that series. I think I read the first 4 books and something was irritating me. I felt like Cassandra Clare was dragging out this plot point. Jace's parentage. I don't really like it when books do that. There are some things in this book that I feel like Cassandra Clare did kind of drag out, but also she gave us breadcrumbs along the way, and I feel like she did that more in this series than in The Mortal Instruments. But this series did make or inspire me to pick up The Mortal Instruments again, so I haven't gotten to them yet, but I do want to give The Mortal Instruments another go and try and read it from start to finish, especially in these editions. I really like these paperback editions, and The Mortal Instruments series also looks very similar to this, and it just looks nice all lined up on a shelf. But Cassandra Clare's writing drastically improved from her first couple of Mortal Instruments books. The level that she has improved is just astounding, honestly. It's probably my most favorite series, next to one other series that I'm gonna talk about in this video, and of course Harry Potter. I mean, nothing can touch Harry Potter for me, pretty much, but I'm sad it's over, but it was a beautiful, sweet, wild ride. The next book that I read was Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. It doesn't fit the spooky theme for October, but I had been waitlisted for this book for like a couple of months through my library. It finally became available, and so I just immediately jumped on it. Didn't really know what to expect and didn't even really know what it was about, but it's just been so talked about on YouTube, and now they're making a TV show about it, apparently, with Reese Witherspoon and Kerry Washington. So I really wanted to give it a shot, and I'm so glad I did. I'm gonna refer back to some notes that I wrote because I finished this book on October 8th, so it's been a minute. I mean, I guess you would call it an adult contemporary, but it's not light by any means. It deals with some very heavy-hitting stuff. First of all, it's set in the 90s. As a child of the 90s, I was extremely happy. The book kind of centers around two families, and the first family we have is the upper class, white, the Richardsons. We have Mrs. Richardson, her husband, but you know, he's not really that central to the story. And they have 4 kids: Lexi, Trip, Moody, and Izzy. And all of the 4 children are of high school age. And then we have a family that moves into a property that the Richardsons own. We have Mia, who is a single mom, and her daughter, Pearl. Mia is an artist. They kind of just scrape by. Mia doesn't really have a steady salary. She will work odd jobs, save up some money, and then quit that job so she can focus on her art. And then usually her and Pearl pack up the car and move to a new place. Mia finally promises Pearl that we're gonna stay in this town, we're gonna put down roots. What is the damn name of the town? Shaker Heights. So we have one part of the book that focuses on Mrs. Richardson and Mia's relationship, and then we have another part of the book that focuses on the relationships with the Richardson children and with Pearl. This book just completely took me by surprise. It's more of a character study and less of a high-paced plot, but I wanted to keep reading just because the character studies were so interesting and so well done and flushed out. I was hooked from start to finish. The different ways that these characters' lives intertwine with each other, and Celeste Ng presents you not once but at least twice, maybe 3 times, with this kind of impossible situation. There's not really a right or a wrong answer. You could argue both sides to it, and it was just so compelling, and it really makes you think. An extremely thought-provoking book. The web that Celeste Ng weaves between all of these characters and their lives and how they connect with each other was just fascinating to watch. If you're a mother, or you've ever wanted to be a mother, or you're even getting to the age where the idea of having children has started to pop up in your mind, I feel like this book is going to hit you really hard. If you have a very powerful stance on abortion or pro-life, this book is going to hit you really hard. Yeah, just FYI, trigger warnings for infertility and abortion. Negatives, I don't really have any, except maybe I didn't love the ending. And I'm not going to say why I didn't love the ending. I think I'm just going to say that I'm going to cut that out. I'm not going to say why I didn't love the ending. I'm just going to say I didn't care for it. However, that was not enough for me to dock it down any stars. So this book got 5 stars from me. I freaking loved it. And yeah, I did listen to Little Fires Everywhere on audiobook, and I feel that the audiobook was wonderfully done. The next book that I listened to on audiobook was Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. This is narrated by Elizabeth Gilbert herself, so that was a nice surprise. I mean, you'd expect it would be, but still, I was glad that she read it. I'm a huge fan of Elizabeth Gilbert. Eat, Pray, Love was pretty life-changing for me, I would say, when I read it, gosh, more than 10 years ago. I absolutely loved Eat, Pray, Love. Did not care for The Signature of All Things. I'm gonna be real with you. Sorry. However, another historical fiction she wrote that she recently published was called City of Girls, and I really enjoyed that. And I just heard yesterday from Elizabeth Gilbert's Instagram that City of Girls is being made into a movie. But anyway, we're gonna talk about Big Magic. It's a nonfiction book. I think it's called like Big Magic Creative Living Beyond Fear, maybe? That's the tagline of it. Unfortunately, this book didn't really resonate with me, and that's because I had expectations of what I wanted from the book. I wanted it to inspire me to be more creative, and that's not really what this book is for. This book is basically trying to convince you to create your work. Don't be afraid to publish it, or don't be afraid to put it out there for the world to see, and not to take your work too seriously. Elizabeth Gilbert, gosh, as much as I love her, she can get kind of preachy. And in the book, she says stuff like, creativity is everything. And at the same time, creativity is also nothing. It is the most important thing, and at the same time, the least important thing. I don't know, I was just hoping for more like exercises, something to get the creative juices flowing. A book that does that is actually The Artist's Way by Julia, I gotta look up her name. Julia Cameron. Okay, I didn't even have to look it up. Julia Cameron. That book really inspired me to get creative. Yeah, Big Magic just didn't do it for me, unfortunately. And I only ended up giving it 3 stars. The next book that I listened to on audio is Sadie by Courtney Summers. Now, Sadie is cool because it is narrated by a full cast. Half of the book is told in this kind of podcast format, like a true crime podcast, and then the other half is told from Sadie herself, and it alternates between the 2 perspectives. Another heavy-hitting book. We also have a lot of serious topics. Sadie's little sister has been murdered. You learn this at the very beginning of the book. And for the rest of the book, Sadie is kind of going on this journey. She runs away from home. Again, more serious themes: child neglect, child molestation and rape, drug addiction, drug abuse, alcoholism. Not a fun, lighthearted read by any means. I really loved the audiobook. I loved the format and the full cast of characters. Since I had read this book so quickly after finishing Little Fires Everywhere, I wasn't as impacted by it. And sometimes that happens, you know, if you read like a really good book and you give it 5 stars, and you read another book, this book might have been a 5-star if you hadn't read it so close to that strong 5-star. So I already knew that Sadie wasn't gonna be 5 stars for me because it wasn't as memorable as Little Fires Everywhere. I thought it might still score pretty high, and it did score high with me. I gave it 4 stars. I had to dock it down 1 full star for the ending, and I'm not gonna say why, but I did have a major issue with the ending. Is that too spoilery to say stuff like that? After I finished Sadie, I immediately jumped into another audiobook. So I like to have audiobooks while I drive, while I clean. So I immediately jumped into another one, and I chose The Chemist by Stephanie Meyer. All of these years later, I feel like people still aren't ready to forgive Stephanie Meyer for Twilight. And that's really unfortunate because she has a lot more to give than just sparkly vampires. I was a twihard, I'm still a twihard, I'm not gonna lie. Obviously I don't enjoy rereading them as much as I did when I was younger. This book read nothing like Twilight. You would never in a million years read Twilight and then read this book, and without knowing the author, you would say, oh, that's a Stephanie Meyer book. I mean, they're so different, so incredibly different. She has really grown a lot in her writing. The Chemist is a book about a young woman who used to work for the US government, and now she's on the run from the US government. So she is a very gifted chemist. She has the ability to use science and use chemicals to, do I want to say torture? If the US government is trying to get someone to talk and they don't want to talk, rather than torturing them the old-fashioned way, like cutting off fingers or waterboarding or whatever, they bring in the chemist and she gets them to talk. Her name is Alex. She is now on the run from the US government, and she's been on the run for several years. Her old boss, he contacts her with a deal, and he's like, if you do this one last job, we will leave you alone. Let's look up the synopsis. In this gripping page-turner, an ex-agent on the run from her former employers must take one more case to clear her name and save her life. Blah, 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 blah. I don't want to tell you that. Blah, blah, blah. As she sees her choices being rapidly whittled down, she must apply her unique talents in ways she never dreamed of. This book has mixed reviews, but I'm going to tell you right now, I freaking loved it. I absolutely loved it. An added bonus, there's a lot of dogs in this book, and I'm a huge dog person, and so I was psyched for that. So many dogs. The dogs were almost like characters in the book, honestly, like just as valuable to me as the human characters were. It was extremely long. It was like a 17-hour long audiobook. While it was long, it was super action-packed, and my heart was racing several times throughout the book. I think a couple of times I even had to stop because I was like, okay, I can't right now, it's too much. Strong female lead, absolutely nothing like Bella. Alex was capable, she proved herself time and time again. Just a wonderful heroine in my opinion. And honestly, there was nothing I disliked about it. It was a wild ride from start to finish, and I highly, highly enjoyed my time listening to this book, and it got 5 stars. The next book we have is The Devouring Grey by Christine Herman. Gorgeous edition. This was largely a cover buy for me, but also I had heard so many wonderful things about this book on Goodreads. I wanted something that would really fit my October theme, which was spooky, atmospheric, kind of creepy book. So we have Violet Saunders. She moves to a new town with her mother, and actually it's her mother's hometown. And this town is plagued by a beast. It's similar to Stranger Things and the Upside Down. The area where the beast resides is called the Grey, and if you're not careful, you can slip into the Grey, cross into the Grey. If you go in the forest, there's a chance you will slip into the Grey, so you better be careful. This town was founded by 4 people, you know, way back when. The 4 founders' bloodlines are the only ones that can control this beast because they have magical abilities. What I liked about this book is that it was atmospheric. The setting was great, on point for spooky and creepy. Beautiful cover. I mean, it's a gorgeous book. I'm happy to have it on my shelves. What I didn't like, unfortunately, outweighs what I did like about this book. The author is good at writing in the sense that her sentences are nicely crafted, and I did enjoy the writing style of her sentences because sometimes authors, you know, do too much, and I don't like that. I'm not sure she's good at writing in terms of storytelling because I felt like I didn't really know the characters at all. They didn't feel fleshed out to me. Stuff happened way too fast. For example, on one page, the characters can be getting in like a crazy argument at the top of the page. And by the bottom of the page, the argument's already over. And like, especially there was one part with Violet and her mom, and she's just, it's like Violet was filled with rage at her mom, blah, blah, blah. And then like 2 paragraphs later, she's like, Violet felt sorry for her mom. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, we're just going through it way too fast. Everything was very forgettable. I felt that the magic system wasn't explained well. I feel like most people really liked this book, but I was just, very meh on it. It wasn't an enjoyable reading experience. I didn't have the feeling like, oh, I gotta get back to the Devouring Grey. I want to know what's gonna happen next. I never felt that way. Everything was just very forgettable. So unfortunately, I only gave it 3 stars. 2 stars for me is a book that I really disliked, but 3 stars for me is a book that had some aspects I liked and some aspects I didn't like. And yeah, while I liked the atmosphere and the kind of creepy town, that's really where it ended for me, unfortunately. The next book I read, I listened to on audiobook. Doesn't fit the spooky theme, but that's okay. That book was The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Oh, man. I'm just gonna say it right now. As of today, I have read 85 books this year. The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo is the best book I have read all year. We have Evelyn Hugo, who is an aging Hollywood starlet. I think she's in her 70s, and she decides she's going to do a tell-all, her whole life story, the truth about her past, all 7 husbands. She enlists the help of basically a no-name reporter called Monique Grant. Monique Grant works for this magazine. Evelyn Hugo contacts the magazine and is like, I will only tell my story if Monique Grant is the one to interview me and write this story. This audiobook is narrated by 3 women. We have one woman who reads Evelyn Hugo and who does a freaking spectacular job. We have one woman who reads Monique Grant, also does a wonderful job, puts so much emotion into the character, loved her part. And then we have a 3rd woman who reads like tabloid excerpts. This book f***ed me up, dude. It f***ed me up so hard. I cried. I'm like gonna, oh my God, I'm like gonna cry thinking about it right now. It was so well written. So freaking well written. A portion of the book consists of present day Monique Grant talking to Evelyn Hugo, and a huge chunk of the book is about the past and Evelyn Hugo's life. Her relationships, oh my God. Best book maybe I've ever read ever. Seriously, it was so good. You feel like Evelyn Hugo is a real person. You feel like she really existed in the golden age of Hollywood. I enjoyed the heck out of the audiobook, but I would really love to sit down and, you know, highlight some good parts and just, you know, read it physically because I feel like I can better absorb the story. If the premise of hearing about old Hollywood, the tell-all of a former Hollywood starlet, if that seems interesting to you, you need to pick up this book because, honey, you are not ready. You're not. The next book I listened to on audiobook was Wilder Girls by Rory Power. It was advertised to me as sapphic horror, meaning that there are female-female relationships. It was advertised as a female retelling or a feminist retelling of Lord of the Flies. I've never read Lord of the Flies. While it was advertised as sapphic, it wasn't as gay as I was hoping for. I was hoping for maximum gayness, and I did not get that, so was slightly disappointed there. We have an all-girls boarding school, I guess, that's on this island, and the entire island, all of the animals, all of the people living on the island, which is just mainly the school, they have been infected with this pretty nasty illness called the tox. Wildly varying symptoms. If you can't handle gore, you need to skip over this part because it was extremely gory and graphic. If you know me, you know I love a good plague. I love a nasty, freaky, dystopian-like plague. But there were times in this book where even I was like, woo, that's a little too graphic for me. One girl had like a second spine growing out of her back. Our main character, Hetty, her eye is like fused shut. Sometimes she cries blood and pus, and she can feel something pulsing behind her eye. I mean, there were just a ton of weird illnesses going on due to the tox. And they're told that, you know, people are working for a cure for the tox, but it's been a couple years and the girls are dropping like flies. And so what I liked about this book is definitely the creepy illness, you know, sometimes gag worthy, you know, gross, but at the same time weirdly fascinating. Setting was creepy. I liked the idea of kind of a boarding school being taken over, the inhabitants left to fend for themselves. That was cool. So what I didn't like about this book is similar to The Devouring Grey, the characters did not feel fleshed out for me. The romance was underwhelming. Didn't care for the ending, again. I feel like the author could have done so much more with that setting. Like, she could have created so many more heart-stopping moments. She just didn't. There was never a time where I felt like, oh my god, what's gonna happen? I don't know. Just kind of forgettable. Yeah, this amazing setting, but kind of poorly executed in my opinion. I don't think it was bad as a lot of people are saying. I gave it a 3.5. I did genuinely want to keep listening and hear what was going on, but it never really sucked me in. The next book I listened to, which is going to sound pretty similar to Wilder Girls, is Sawkill Girls by Claire Legrand. All I knew going into this book was that it centered around 3 girls. They also lived on an island called Sawkill Rock, and that girls were going missing from this island. Sawkill Girls, or the author Claire Legrand, expertly crafted this very creepy, slightly erotic atmosphere and story. Her writing was wonderful. A couple times I also gagged. In regards to this book, I mentioned in a vlog that sometimes with thrillers, the author will kind of drag out like what's haunting the town or why these girls are disappearing. But this book, you learn pretty quickly why these girls are disappearing, and it was not what I expected. I was like, okay, snap. It was super compelling. I had to know what was gonna happen next. It was plot driven, but at the same time, very character driven. So 3 deep, thought-provoking character studies. We have Val the It Girl, super popular, beautiful. We have Zoe, who is kind of the outcast, and we have Marion, who is the new girl to town. Wonderfully done. Honestly, I've never read a book quite like this in my life, and it surprised me time and time again. There is a female-female romance. I was not expecting that. I feel like this relationship was a lot more satisfying and fulfilling than the relationship in Wilder Girls. Maximum gay, I was happy for that. Just the way that Claire Legrand wrote made the book, like I said, creepy but also slightly erotic. And you're like, oh goodness. Like, even the creepy parts were erotic. I highly recommend this one. I really do. It got 4.5 stars from me because the only thing I didn't like, do I want to say? I didn't love Val's arc. It didn't seem super believable to me. I had some issues with that. And that's all I'm going to say. The next book I read was Pumpkinheads by Rainbow Rowell. It is a graphic novel. If you watched my TBR video, you know, you heard me say like, oh, I'm not sure if I want to buy this book. I might not buy it because Rainbow Rowell has been problematic, blah, blah, blah. And I still bought it. The hype got to me, I will say that. I love a good graphic novel. I don't love purchasing them because oftentimes they're quite heavy, they're expensive, and you read through them so fast, and it just kind of feels like that was kind of a waste of money. I'm not gonna say waste of money, but sometimes it feels like that. And I live in Japan. I will be going back to America at some point. I've said this like 50 times on my channel, but I gotta ship all my books home. And so I don't buy as nearly as many graphic novels as I would like to because I don't want to ship them all home. But I still did it. I bought Pumpkinheads because you know what? I love fall. I love it so much. Fall in America, and this just made my heart ache for fall in America. God, I want to go to a pumpkin patch. It takes place at a freaking pumpkin patch. Oh my God, just look at the map. Look at the map of the pumpkin patch. Oh, the camera's about to die. Hay rack ride, corn maze, pumpkin fields, pumpkin bomb stand, which a pumpkin bomb is like pumpkin pie on a stick with vanilla ice cream dipped in chocolate. The plot was okay. The romance was okay. But the freaking setting, man, I just loved the setting so much. And I can definitely see myself reading this book again. So in spite of myself, I gave this bad boy 4 stars. A few times the characters did genuinely make me laugh. I did burst out laughing with some of the things, especially Deja. I really liked Deja. Him, he's okay. I don't even remember his name. Josie? Joe? If you want a little bit of fall cheer, I can't lie, it's a very, very cute, fun read for fall. Funny story, the battery died, and the last book that I was going to talk about, I actually hadn't even finished reading it yet. And that book is Obsidian by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. I had about 70 pages left of this, and it reads very quickly because, you know, it's in mixed media format. So I don't even know what I was gonna do. I was gonna tell you, obviously, that I hadn't finished this book. I wasn't gonna lie and be like, yeah, I read it. It took me a really long time to finish it because I didn't want to finish it. I didn't want it to be over. When I read the Illuminae files, I considered it to be the best book I had read all year. And then, as we know, Evelyn Hugo came along. I just finished it just this minute. I let the battery charge for a little while, and I read this while it was charging. Man, I loved this series so much. I think it is probably my favorite series of all time, next to Harry Potter. It was so damn good, and I just love science fiction. I loved everything about this series. As I've said in a previous video, I DNF'd Illuminae like 5 or 6 times because I just couldn't get into it. But once I finally got into it, it just took me on a freaking roller coaster ride. It takes place in the distant future on a distant planet. The planet is attacked by a bloodthirsty corporation. I don't know. They attack the planet. Some survivors escape, but they encounter a whole bunch of near-death situations. These books are everything, man. They have romance, they have sci-fi, fantasy, dystopian maybe? I don't know. Thriller, horror, everything. These books are everything, and I loved them so freaking much. Heart-stopping moments, tear-worthy moments. I cannot say enough good things about this series. I really can't. Aiden, you're my boy. I mean, I don't always agree with what you do, but you're my boy. My heart is so full right now. This is a series that I will reread time and time again. Now we have to talk about the not fun stuff. And honestly, I was on such a high from just finishing Obsidian that I almost didn't want to talk about this, but I have to talk about it. And that is my DNF. And unfortunately, it was the most disappointing book I've read all year. I was incredibly hyped for it, as you saw in my TBR. If you know me, you know what it is. Nevernight. How can I have loved the Illuminae files so much? It's co-authored by Jay Kristoff, and how can I hate one of Jay Kristoff's books so much? I don't understand. Nevernight is about Mia Corvair, who is a young girl. I don't know, she's like 17 or something. She witnesses her father executed for treason, and she decides that it is now her lifelong mission to get accepted into this school of assassins, and she is going to make every single person who took part in her father's death, she's going to make them pay. I am on page 247 of 427. So about halfway. can see my bookmark. I'm not gonna call this a true DNF because I don't like to DNF books. As you just heard, I DNF'd the Illuminae files like 5 times. I've ended up getting through it. One of my favorite books of all time. So I do plan to finish Nevernight, I just don't know when. But I can tell you that I'm not enjoying myself. And even halfway into it, I'm still not enjoying myself. One of the things I was most excited about for this book has become the thing that I absolutely can't stand about this book, and that is the footnotes. You see this page? All of this is footnotes. Every other page, we got footnotes. That page didn't have any, shocker. Here, another huge, huge thing of footnotes. I mean, this book is, look at this. From here to here, that's all footnotes. This book is like twice as long because of the footnotes. And he adds these footnotes right in the middle of action scenes, and it completely pulls you out of the story. Like someone's about to die, or someone's holding a knife, and then it's like there's a star, and you have to go down to the f***ing footnotes, and it tells you about some history or some other pointless thing. I hate the footnotes so much. If the footnotes did not exist, I'm not saying I would like this book, but I wouldn't hate it as much as I do. I don't like it. I wanted to like it, man. I really thought I was gonna like this. I thought I was gonna love this series. And it breaks my heart that I hate it so much. I mean, I can't say that for sure. I have to finish it before I can say that I can hate it. But I hate the footnotes. I hate his writing style. I'm sorry, I do. Stuff like Mia pointed at her temper and told it to go sit in the corner. Just extra, doing too much. And I don't know why. I like Jay Kristoff. I follow him on Twitter, on Instagram, and I like him. I think he's funny. I don't know what it is about this book that's just not working for me. I don't like his humor in this book. And I don't know why I have such a stick up my butt about it, but I'm just like, I'm trying to read this story. I'm trying to read about Mia. I'm trying to go with her on her journey to this assassin school. And, you know, I like her bloodlust. I want to see her f some people up and murder some people. I really do. But I don't need footnotes every other page. It's him trying to weave in history and world building. And I feel like it would be more natural and authentic if he just like worked it into the writing, the regular writing, or the conversation somehow. Like instead of going down to the footnote and talking about the history, it having be like Mia had heard of an ancient tale of blah blah blah, and then that's how you tell the history, you know? Like, I know I'm in the minority because this has a really high rating on Goodreads. It's got like a 4.3, which is quite high. Do I just skip the footnotes and keep going? Is it me? You know, do I just have bad taste? If you've read Nevernight, you gotta tell me. You gotta tell me what your thoughts are on it. Okay, I've been talking for way too long. I need to shut up, and the sun is almost down. That's it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.